Barracks 5. It's predominantly an infantry barracks, but sometimes the cavalry would stay here. This is one of the buildings that has some activity. If anybody's interested in ghost hunting and things like that, maybe you could check this building sometimes, walk along the back side. During Christmas events, we have soldiers in uniform sleeping in here, to go out and act as soldiers the next day and whatnot. And once in a while, they'll tell some strange stories. You don't know if they've been drinking too much while they're out here, or if it's some actual stuff. But two different gentlemen from different areas, both from Texas, but just different areas, were staying in here one night, and one guy got to go to the restroom, another one just sat up because he couldn't sleep anymore. And he heard someone come in the door again, and saw the guy go over to the fire and stoke it a bit, get it going again, and he walked out the door. But then he realized the door wasn't open when he walked out the door. Then the other guy came back in from the bathroom. He said, "Did you just see somebody walk out there?" And the guy says, "No, I just went to the bathroom. I'm just coming in myself right now." He says, "You didn't come here and stoke the fire?" I says, "No, I didn't do that at all." And as they said that, a chair over here at the little checker table slid back like somebody had just sat in it. And these are, this is hearsay. I'm giving you a story that somebody else had told me. But I got a story I can tell you myself. One time, we'll go out there if you'd like, but I was walking along the back side here between the barracks and the mess hall. And I was just walking along, minding my own business, and I had my keys and I was shuffling with them, and I dropped them. And I bent over and I started to say, "Son of a," and I didn't finish that statement because I heard someone walking around the corner. And I thought it was one of the other guys, going to give me a hard time about, talking loud or whatever. So I looked up, and as I looked up, I saw a pair of legs come around the corner of the building. As I looked up further, it was just a pair of legs. There was nothing above it. And as I gasped, kind of, surprised, all of a sudden they just disappeared. And so that happened right here on a very, very, very cold day, right after Christmas over Fort Concho. And this is about the same time these gentlemen saw their, specter. And another guy that worked here, prior to me working here, saw a similar, it was a half figure of a body, but the upper half over by the wood pile. Around the same time, the same temperature. So it was kind of odd. But then again, this is the building I was in. If you know, some of these boards really do move as I walk on them. And on the cold days, they'll stick together and then pop back up. And it will sound like someone's walking. So some things you can't explain, some things you can. Now there is a lot of, we wonder really who this guy is. We think it's a sergeant. And there's a couple sergeants that died around this time period. One that we, for the longest time, thought was Sergeant Cunningham. And he died on Christmas Eve, about 4 o'clock in the morning. So it was probably Christmas Day, actually. He had bad cirrhosis of the liver and was definitely going to die. And the doctor released him to go home. Well, we had always assumed that his home was here in the barracks, but it turned out that he was married and would have lived further, probably a little bit closer to the river behind the corrals there. And so we started doing a little bit more research, and there was some other candidates it could be. One of the probably grislier deaths here was Sergeant Bush. He was with the 10th Cavalry, one of the first sergeants. And all the records say he was a tall man, which is odd because the cavalry usually had short fellows. But for whatever reason, he was sad or lonely, Sergeant Bush killed himself. And it's possible he could have been here even though he was cavalry. Sometimes the cavalry did stay here, especially when they had a lot of regiments. Or a lot of the companies of the regiment, I should say. Any questions? Would y'all like to go back out here and see where I saw the specter supposedly? Or?
Sure.
Okay. So it's right about here I dropped my keys. And then right down there at the end where you see the porch end, I saw the figure walking around the corner there. And right when he reached the middle there, right about the middle of the porch, he just disappeared. And it was one of the, the darndest things. We don't have a guardhouse anymore, but it would have been a little bit past this building right here. So I'm going to show you this area. One time we had a Sergeant Duncan. And Sergeant Duncan was throwing the guardhouse because he stole some blankets and sold them. Not a very, heinous crime. He didn't kill a whole bunch of people. He didn't, burn down a church while people were in service. But he was in the guardhouse. And they were going to try him and probably court-martial him because the sergeant should know better than things like that. But he didn't want to be court-martialed, so what he decided to do, let's see if we can get back far enough here, but the guardhouse would have been approximately just past this building over here. Let's get us through here. and he was having a guard escort him to the sinks. The sinks is basically the 1870s version of a latrine, and that would have stayed here about midway between, past that light right there. And it was a 20-foot long building, and inside that 20-foot long building was an 8-foot wide ditch that was 10 feet deep, and that was the restroom for these soldiers. Maybe they called it a sink. Anyway, Sergeant Duncan was being escorted from the guardhouse over here to the closest sink, and when they got about halfway, which is probably about right here, he started running off in this direction. Now the guard on detail with him, told him to stop, halt, or you'll be shot upon or whatever, and Sergeant Duncan did not stop. He kept running. So the soldier aimed and fired and missed. Now Duncan, being an experienced soldier, knew how quickly it took to reload a weapon, so he turned back around and attacked the guard. So there's a lot of scuffling going on. The corporal of the guard by now had heard the shot, came rushing out here and saw the sergeant and the guard fighting over the rifle, and shot Sergeant Duncan dead about in this area right here. So this might be another spot if you want to come back and do some little EVP work or EMF stuff. Definitely, we know that a man died in this general area. Probably a lot more than that, though. It's a very violent fort. These soldiers sometimes turned on each other. Any questions so far? Okay.
The guardhouse is that little building right there?
No, that's the magazine or the powder house. As we go towards the headquarters, in fact, we can go down this way and I'll show you. We'll walk down the Caliche Road towards the headquarters. Now, originally the guardhouse was supposed to be escape-proof. You'd think so, right? But some of the guys helping build it probably knew they were going to get in trouble, so they made some chinks and stuff in the rock where they'd be able to pull rocks out if they needed to. So it took a while, but they discovered that the guardhouse wasn't escape-proof and fixed that right up. And I did have another strange experience. We had an exhibit one time, and I was sitting in one of these the old art museum, the quartermaster, and well, that was odd. As I was waiting for people to come down, because they had told me that a big group was coming down, I was outside in the back area, and I saw a gentleman kind of peek around the corner. And it was odd because this man was basically dressed in white from head to toe, and it was just an odd color. And then I went over to say something to him, and I didn't hear him walk away because the gravel didn't crunch under his feet, and there was nobody there by the time I reached the corner. It turns out that a lot of the cavalry and the people that worked in the quartermaster would sometimes wear a stable frock, which was white canvas clothes. So that was just another odd thing. I couldn't explain that. It may have just been that I was tired that day, but it just did seem an odd place to see somebody. And that was right back here between these two buildings right here. Sadly, somebody that used to work at Fort Concho has told some rumors and some stories you might see circulating on the internet. And probably one of the most prominent is a guy named Sergeant Fletcher, who supposedly haunts our headquarters building. But as far as I know, I've never had anything happen in there. As far as I know, nobody has died in that building. However, though, after the fort closed, there's no way of knowing who lived there or when or in what capacity, so we don't know if anything happened in that time period.
Is there a log that logs all the deaths that were here at Fort Concho?
We do have a wall in our visitor center there in that room with the horse that has all the deaths, civilian, the soldiers and all their family and stuff like that.
To tell how they died?
No, not really, but we do have in our archives, we have a listing that does mention that. And this had to be gathered by all the different reports and stuff. One of the, I seem to remember the details roughly on this one. We had a Colonel Merriam coming to Fort Concho with his family and their newborn son. As they were crossing the Concho that year, it flooded very badly, and a lot of soldiers lost their lives, as well as the colonel's wife and their newborn child. They were some of the first, one of the big tragedies here at Fort Concho. But actually, we get to the hospital, we'll talk more about Dr. Knotson, but his child, Otis Rockwell Knotson, was one of the first officers' children to die here at the Fort Concho.